Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Nutrition Collective events. We are delighted today to have husband and wife duo, Dr. Geoffrey and Lucille Leader, with us today for this unique interview on understanding how to work integratively in the field of Parkinson's disease. Before we invite Lucille and Dr. Geoffrey to join us, just a little bit of background on them. Dr. Geoffrey Leader is the medical director for the Parkinson's Disease Integrated Nutrition Clinic, and his wife, Lucille Leader, is actually the nutrition director for the very same clinic. So we're very excited to have them, not only because we are interested in understanding how they got interested in this specialty, but also we would love to know how they work integratively with the patient that comes into their clinic and understand a little bit more about this fascinating world of Parkinson's disease. Welcome, Dr. Geoffrey. Welcome, Lucille, to this interview.
Hello, Romina. Lovely for us to be here and to share with you.
Delight for me too, Romina.
Thank you. It's really lovely to see a couple, a husband and wife, working not just professionally, but having a personal connection with each other in all the work you're doing. And I will just jump in with my first question to both of you that I'd like you to answer individually, is just to understand, where did this passion actually come from around the topic of Parkinson's disease? How did you actually fall into this specialty, or was there a story behind that in your lives?
I'm going to let Lucille start with the answer to that question, because she encountered the passion just before I did. So I will let her make a start, and then I will add my bit to that.
Right. Which, as soon as I told him about it, of course, he was on board, because Geoffrey, at the time that the story began, was the lead of the London Pain Relief and Nutritional Support Clinic, which supported all a multi collection of chronic disease that needed nutritional and medical support in a multidisciplinary way. He will tell you more about that later. How it started was that we had a very great friend who had Parkinson's disease, and he suddenly started to look more and more thin and fragile. So he wasn't our patient, but because we felt close to him, I felt I could say, speaking to you as a nutritional therapist and your dear friend, can I just be sure that you're absolutely okay? You know, that you've just got the Parkinson's, but there's no reason else for this loss of weight. And to my amazement, he said, thanks for asking. As a matter of fact, I have been checked in and out. There's nothing other than the Parkinson's. But you see, I'm just losing the weight. So I said, well, what is your diet? And he said, well, about the diet is actually very little to tell you, because I'm trying not to eat as much as possible, because then my L-DOPA drug, which is the drug that the brain is the most dynamic of drugs, uses to make dopamine. It enters from the bowel into the bloodstream, up into the brain, and makes dopamine, which is deficient. Aha, a red light went up with me. I thought there's some competition at these receptor sites. Contacted the manufacturers of these L-DOPA drugs, and I indeed managed to ascertain that there was competition between certain molecules in protein food and the L-DOPA drug for absorption, for the competition for the carrier that carries through. So immediately we did the homework. I did my homework into how long it takes for these protein molecules to be out of the gut, and did that with research. That was information, and I told Geoffrey, and Geoffrey was as excited as can be, and the two of us then made a scheme for him to keep a distance. It was a couple of hours between certain molecules in certain foods from the drug, and it was amazing. His drug worked magnificently. His L-DOPA, his movement was controlled, and he started to put on weight. He then let everybody know that he knew about his help with all his movement. People started to contact us, and that's how then the great interest started in our excitement that we could help. Now, Geoffrey then made up a protocol how we then receive patients at the clinic. Would you like him to say about that, or tell you in his own words my excitement, how it became his?
So before we discuss that, I'd like to say, to answer the question, how do we share the passion? How did I become passionate as well? Well, the answer is very simple. We have great respect and interest for each other on an interest level and on an opinion level, and generally what we feel about things. So having Lucille become passionate, it was not unusual for me then to take an interest and say to her, well, what are you so passionate about? And because we share each other's interests, I became passionate because I learned from her what she was passionate about. And now I became so passionate that I thought, well, I've got to find out what this is all about too, because we're always both very open to learning new things. So I went to the Institute of Optimum Nutrition, to ION, to study nutrition, and I got my diploma in nutrition. So that's how really we shared the passion of nutrition.
We could understand things biochemically together. Although he was biochemically trained, he was a lead in pain clinics, lead in intensive care, consultant anesthetist as well. But he now had this extra biochemical training, and so of course the language became very much more common that way.
Yes.
This is very, very fascinating to know that, Lucille started off as a nutritional therapist and then trained and got interested in Parkinson's disease. And then Dr. Geoffrey, you being a medical doctor, then decided to take a degree in nutritional therapy as well, as Lucille said, to understand the biochemical pathways in nutrition, and to then specialize in Parkinson's disease. I think that's truly fascinating to have two professionals working together in this way in the clinic.
Well, there's a little rider to that, because I started off as an anesthetist, and I became so interested, of course, in the nutrition that we ran this, or I ran this alongside my anesthetic practice.
Yes, but
because we shared our interest, not only did we discuss how nutrition applied to peri-surgical or peri-anesthetic assessment of the patient's nutrition before the anesthetic, but also any nutritional aspects during the anesthetic and any nutritional aspects after the anesthetic. So this really had a knock-on effect in what I was doing. At the same time, Lucille learned more about anesthesia, and she could often tell you very, very simply what it was like to have an anesthetic, what you needed to do beforehand, how you conducted the anesthetic during the procedure, and how the anesthetic was during the recovery. So we swapped each other's interests there, and the nutrition certainly applied to anesthesia, and she learned more anesthesia at the same time.
Right. May I just say also, in our books for Parkinson's disease, this is one of them, Parkinson's disease, reducing symptoms with nutrition and diet. Geoffrey has a lovely chapter on preparation for people with Parkinson's for having surgery, because that is very specialized. And again, if he would be giving any, which he developed, very specialized deep sedation for people undergoing deep sedation with Parkinson's disease, and what nutritional aspects he could infuse to help the liver recover and the cell energy and so forth. And that was very much a combination in that we would flag up together what are the metabolic aspects that are affected by this drug. So I would come in on the metabolic aspects, which he now understood because he himself was a registered nutritional therapist, but also the drugs that he would be infusing in Parkinson's. And together, many people are post anesthesia with the Parkinson's would say, oh, I feel I've had a holiday, rather than, feeling worse because it's been stressful.
So it's fascinating what you've just described to me, both of you, that, you're actually hand-holding the patient, and the patient actually is a little bit in a better condition because you're working with them in so many different ways, integratively, as well as working with them nutritionally to reduce any side effects that may occur from any kind of drugs they're taking at the moment.
Yes, but that's just the drugs, but we do other things, not just the drugs and just the nutrients. That's why we call it integrated. If you want to know something about that, I'll pop in and say it as well.
Yes. So what fascinates me, especially myself as a nutritional therapist, is to understand how both of you have worked together integratively on a Parkinson's disease patient at the clinic. What happens and how do you both collaborate?
I'll just say,
yes.
What we send a letter to the GP to get all the medical history. It will include then their neurology reports, the whole health history, and then we send a 10-page questionnaire, and then only do we make the appointment because we feel we know a lot, and the patient must come in with a supporter. We always have another person with them that will be supportive of them, a family member or a friend. If that's not available, we ask social services if they can provide a supporter. Then Geoffrey, and we say we receive them together. Yeah.
Just before we receive them together, I want to emphasize the multidisciplinary approach that we have. Now, the multidisciplinary approach is headed like a triangle by the GP. The GP is the person at the top of the triangle, and all our findings are collated and referred back to the GP. Now, together with the GP, we also, of course, have the neurologist, and in the parallel, we refer to the neurologist, our findings, as well as to the GP. Now, as well as that, if you imagine a cartwheel, and the spokes of the wheel are all the disciplines that we can relate to. So with the patient at the center. Now, at the center is the patient with his medical issues, with or without drugs. And when it comes to approach, we charter or we relate to all the disciplines such as physiotherapy, speech therapy, movement therapy, and any other therapies, especially relaxation therapy, which we might find useful. So our approach basically then is related to drugs, with or without drugs. Underpinning this is the nutrition, and then surrounding all that are the different disciplines which we relate to and access as necessary. So back to Lucille, receiving the patient.
Okay, we receive them, thank you, Geoffrey, we receive them together, and Geoffrey goes through the medical side with them and looks at their movement, and we see how their speech is, and many other things that are medically connected. We both discussed their bowel function, which in Parkinson's is a very big challenge on the whole. Look at the movement, ask how they're doing with their on-off periods, have they got dyskinesia and so forth. So then Geoffrey can work out which monitoring forms from this book for them, so that they can come back with a report to their doctors and their neurologists, so they can be helped to avoid the dreaded off period, and so forth. Now, what Geoffrey was saying about us giving all reports back to the medical profession, so important is it that I wrote a book, and it's called Medical Collaboration for Nutritional Therapists, and it has Professor Leslie Findlay, neurologist, in it, Geoffrey, as well as an anaesthetist, Dr. Serena Leader as a GP, how important is that we nutritional therapists work in collaboration for best and safe practice with the entire team headed by the GP, as Geoffrey says. Okay, I then look at all the things that need to be looked at, because nutritional therapy, as you know, Romina, we look very much on a cellular level. We don't make a move without knowing what does the biochemical test say. We look at the and write up tests to be done for looking at cell energy deficiencies in those nutrients which affect the body's making of metabolism of dietary protein to dopamine, because we're looking at Parkinson's disease. We look at inflammatory markers. This is an inflammatory illness. I very much question whether people can occasionally choke or have any chewing or swallowing difficulties. So I know that I've got to make sure that through Geoffrey we get a referral to an ENT surgeon who will refer to a speech therapist. Osteopathy, yes, what else?
Energy markers.
Energy markers are very important, because the mitochondria, the energy, the powerhouses in our cells that make energy, are compromised in Parkinson's disease. So we're very, very keen on supporting that. And also because one of the most important and magical drugs for Parkinson's disease in itself compromises making cell energy. So we nutritional therapists must work together with the doctors. When they're on that particular drug, we must make sure we put all the nutritional factors, the specific ones, in place to support the magic. So that's really what we do. Right off and off they go. And look at the bowel function. Do we need to send tests for that?
Lucille, may I ask what is the Lucille? Yes, I was going to ask if you could tell us what is the magic drug called, the one that actually affects mitochondrial energy?
Right. At the same time as doing its magic, it's L-DOPA. It's L-DOPA. It is the cardinal most effective drug for Parkinson's, but we must be aware that there are two things about it. It's the timing of taking it in relation to specific food molecules, which we have written about in our books. It's not all of them, so we've made a list of the common ones. It does the most marvelous job, but it must be done in a certain way to have the best response possible without the side effects. And we are very passionate, Geoffrey and I, of having that formula for helping people, so much. And it's very much our joint passion there.
So just to get back to the first visit, so we then ascertain what nutritional tests are relevant and what are important, so that we can work out any deficiencies or any thing which is too much.
Yes, also the routine medical tests are part of that.
And routine medical tests are part of that. And often we get a lot of these tests from the GP in their letter.
We can request them.
And we do request them. So that's the first visit, and off they go for their tests. Then Lucille will tell you about the second. We have a basic protocol of 3 visits. Lucille will tell you now about the second visit.
Yeah, all the test results are in. We have a look. Geoffrey's monitoring forms for those people that are in L-DOPA. There are other drugs, but they're not as they don't have this tremendous effect that the L-DOPA does. They're marvelous drugs, but they are not monitored in the same way as Geoffrey monitors the L-DOPA. And we discuss all those results and what is the way forward, and we write up what is needed in terms of deficiencies, support for all those pathways we've said, make sure that we don't get, for those people maybe you're shaking so much they can't hold the food utensils well, that you're going to get an occupational therapist requested from the GP, physiotherapist, osteopath. And now a very important one, which Geoffrey mentioned originally, relaxation techniques, people for something to do with stress, is that because dopamine metabolizes through to adrenaline in Parkinson's, when we've done some lovely drawings of those in our books, dopamine metabolizes to adrenaline. Now we need adrenaline for all of us including whether you've got Parkinson's, to regulate our response to stress. Well, this pathway is impaired in Parkinson's. Therefore, the most important pill for a Parkinson person is to be able to have techniques to lessen the emotional surge, leading to the problem with adrenaline. There is more biochemical explanation of that, but I make it simple now. It's a problem, the adrenal support. Okay, we like autogenic training for that as well.
I find that quite fascinating, that you're actually looking at, L-DOPA, you're looking at the side effects, you're working nutritionally, you're working, holistically with occupational therapy and other therapies to support
whatever needs help, need for function.
I would be quite intrigued to understand Dr. Geoffrey's view on what he mentioned to me earlier before the interview on the on-off period. If you could just briefly give us an insight on that to understand how L-DOPA works. And
okay, so
his picture.
The metaphor is like this, we can be explained in a picture. When you give a drug here, it takes time to work, and then it works for a while, and then it wears off. It's not absolutely the same as this particular curve, but it gives you the impression. And then many patients wait for a little while, and then they take their next drug, and the process is repeated. Now, the problem is that when they reach this level, when it wears off, that's when they have problems. And that's what we call the on-off.
The off period.
The off period. So what we want to aim for is to make the drug, which they are using, work at deliver a constant level, like the top of the bridge, and to get rid of all these ups and downs. And the way we do that is very, very specialized. We do that by arranging for the patient to do a test first thing in the morning, which Lucille could perhaps tell you a little bit about, just very, very briefly. And from that, we know how long the drug takes to start working, how long it works for, and how long it wears off. And the idea is to give the next dose of the drug before the dose that we have given wears off, so that we get a constant level of the drug in the bloodstream. And that is what our simple morning test is all about, which we arrange and which is all explained in this little book, which Lucille could tell you about very, very briefly.
Well, you've explained it very well, Geoffrey, actually. It's very, very simple. As Geoffrey said, there's the person takes a drug in order to control their tremor. Some people have got tremor, some people are just very stiff. Okay, take the drug. How long does it take to wear, to have effect? Could be half an hour. Okay, then they have to write that down, and then they're not eating any of the molecules of the competitive molecules from food when they do this little test. So they, on an empty stomach, get up in the morning, see how long it lasts, and no, not how long it lasts, how long it needs to take effect. For instance, half an hour. Okay, after half an hour, they must eat a very specialized breakfast, which we described, which also has no way it can ever affect the competition with this drug. And then after that, they have to stay very calm. Remember what we said, that if there's any adrenal surge, there's not enough dopamine to deal with good metabolism. They must just write down how long it lasts, stay very calm how long it lasts. So say the drug, for instance, lasts for 5 hours and then starts to wear off. There are special questions how they feel is beginning to wear off. So rationally, we would suggest then take your next drug every 4.5 hours. If it takes half an hour to kick in and has gone in 5 hours, if you take it every 4.5 hours, it's got time to work before it's worn off.
That's the basic.
That's a basic thing. But we do it with different doses that the patient has been prescribed by their doctors in the past. So it could be that they'll end up taking a different dose to see which is the best one, so they won't get their dyskinesia, their unwanted movements, and they will not have too large a number of doses to become toxic. And it can be worked out so easily, all that.
Yeah, so either we work out what's the minimum effective dose, what's the least they can take, or they might need a little more. What is the appropriate dose?
And time of taking it.
And time of taking.
That's the most important thing, not 1-3 times a day. Everyone's different.
To relieve their symptoms.
It's truly fascinating because you're actually working on a customized approach for every single patient of yours.
Personalized. Yeah, and it can just say their instruction could be take one 3 times a day, take one 4 times a day. If you feel you're going off, take another one. But everybody is different. What is 3 times a day? For everybody, when we do the monitoring, which is all the schemes are here, shows that everybody's response is for a different time at a different dose. And someone's got to be very careful, not too high doses, as I've said before, and just the right ones.
So it's a question of titration. So not only does a patient take doses at certain intervals, but we determine the intervals which are ideal for that patient, and also we determine the ideal dose.
And the ideal food, because there has to be a break between L-DOPA and certain food groups. We've got carbohydrate food groups, we've got certain kinds of amino acids, not all of them, and protein, we've got the fats, the oils, and that's all worked out according to when is the best time for the person to take their L-DOPA.
So food comes into the third visit, and that is when the timing of taking food in relation to the taking of drugs is discussed.
Yes.
So perhaps the third visit you'd like to mention now very briefly.
Yes, the diet, and there's certain foods which may not be suitable for the brain. There are some foods which are contraindicated. We have been shown in history and neurology, in the medical research. So we slowly wean them off, very, very, very slowly, bringing in delicious substitutes. It's always important that your therapist's mouth must water and make the patient's mouth water at the thought of the substitute food. Never to start a new diet unless you've got something really delicious to replace it and nutritious. That's what we do then, and we monitor slowly with them over the next month. And the bowel, many people have constipation problems. We find, and they live on a lot of laxatives, which themselves can cause a melanosis, such as cascara. You can't have that regularly, so we wean them off. But I have a daily phone in and email in from everybody whose bowel we are trying to get right and to get working correctly. And until we've got the right protocol, they are obliged to have a daily contact. If there is any doubt about the bowel status, we immediately refer, ask the GP for referral to a gastroenterologist. So that's it.
So basically, you need a clean bowel or a well-functioning bowel to absorb the drugs in the best possible way.
Yeah, there's something in the way. The receptor site's not going to take in the nutrients, the drugs, or anything else, and people will have a stressor, being constipated. So this is so important, together with the relaxation by autogenic training. And a lovely person who teaches autogenic training in our clinic is Galen Tudhope.
Absolutely. May I ask, just to give us one example of foods that you would generally avoid for a patient in Parkinson's to take? Just one example of how you're working with one of these foods, and are you taking them with the L-DOPA, away from the L-DOPA, or again, is it a customized approach for every single patient?
Yes, it could.
Yes, I don't know which one shall we choose? Shall I mention gluten or red meat? Let me go for gluten. Let me go for gluten then. Okay. Gluten grains. Okay. Apart from the fact that the wheat gluten grain, wheat, rye, barley, spelt, they are sticky grains. Apart from the fact that the wheat one is very genetically modified, and I believe it's very difficult, even if it's organic, to get it back to its original amount of chromosomes. But number one, they are sticky grains. They stick, which doesn't help with constipated types. But it has been shown that within gluten there is a molecule called gliadin, and in our books we have referred to the medical research on gliadin in neurology and in Parkinson's, and so that is one that it would be good if that grain could be considered by a patient to be substituted. Now, the universe has provided so many other wonderful grains, buckwheat and rice and
quinoa and
other corn and all those others. And you know, the shops are full of very, very good products made of those grains. But again, it can take 3 or 4 weeks for a person to be feeling comfortable on that. People, when you change the diet, it must be so slow because there's a difficulty for Parkinson to detox anything. So once the fat cells start releasing anything, be it something from the gluten grains or from any other food they've eaten, people can feel very, very sick. So that's one of the foods. Alcohol is another one, but that can go into the masterclass. Absolutely.
Speaking of that, we will be having a masterclass with you, Lucille, on the topic of supporting and protocols supporting Parkinson's disease patients and working integratively and nutritionally on that. I will be sharing that at the end, but I think it's so interesting to see how you're working with nutrition, working very precisely with you know, a drug that actually works for Parkinson's disease patients, but monitoring and customizing these protocols according to the person's blood reports and other measurements and metrics you're taking. We are running out of time for the interview, but a last question for the both of you that would really interest me to understand a little bit better how you both have been able to work on a professional level and combine that to your personal life, understanding you're not just colleagues, but you know, a powerful husband and wife duo working and supporting Parkinson's disease.
Well, we like to think that we are both artists. Anesthesia is not only a science, but it's also an art. And Lucille has studied science, but she's also an artist, and especially in her background. She was also a trained concert pianist.
In my first life.
So she's very much an artist. So we share the artistic experience, and we share an interest, a common interest in the arts. We both love music, and we both love experiencing anything which is artistic and needs interpretation. So I think that we do share an enormous amount through the arts.
And we introduce a new one to another. For instance, Geoffrey is a grandmaster, three black belts in Aikido, Ki Aikido, which is the spiritual Aikido. Me with my music background, we have influenced each other. He's taken me and all his children to study Aikido, and all of them are musicians. Geoffrey sings as well. Our son, Joe Leader, has just released a CD called Healing the Heart, especially for these times. Dr. Serena Leader, she's a medical healer as well as Geoffrey. She's a concert violinist, and the other one is a singer who uses it for healing and going into various groups and healing. So we consider that's Felicia Vida, her name is, and she uses it therapeutically, her singing. So this is how we've remained together, is that we've taken time for our arts and we've all shared them, so that although we are 100% every day getting monitorings even through from everybody, we make very sure to keep ourselves whole. Otherwise we can't help anyone else by sharing our interests together, which we love anyway. We don't have to, but we love doing it.
Yes, so
absolutely.
We have time together, and we have time individually to pursue our own specific interest.
We do take time.
That's really wonderful, because I think with music and musical therapy, you're actually working, managing your own energies, managing your passions, but also giving 100% to the Parkinson's Disease Integrated Nutrition Clinic. The work you're doing together is having a massive impact on all patients. So just want to congratulate you on you know, helping the world to be a better place without sounding too cheesy. And I did want to share the screen to share the next masterclass we're doing actually with Lucille, which is an integrated and clinical approach to Parkinson's disease. So we hope that you can attend that. It's on Saturday, the 20th of February, and it's a 2-part masterclass that is, of course, brought to you by the Nutrition Collective. But we'll have our very own Lucille Leader taking up these 2 modules on that Saturday morning. The first part will be covering the theoretical application, understanding what is Parkinson's disease, how does it work, and really understanding the foundation of it. And the second part of the module will be covering the practical application, perhaps a little bit what Dr. Geoffrey and Lucille shared with us today. There will be a deep dive into understanding the protocols and the nutritional information around that. So very, very excited to have you with us again, Lucille, for our masterclass on the 20th of February.
Thank you for your invitation, and may I congratulate you from us both, Romina, for the wonderful input with your Nutrition Collective. We're honored to be and privileged to be invited by you. But before you found us even, we had noted your arrival on the international scene, and you have presented people who have really changed things so much and given us a way forward, indeed, to make the world a better place. And bless you too.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor to have you both, and hope to connect with you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you from me too. And remember, our aim is to enable the patient to function as well and as maximum as possible within the constraints of his or her illness. So that's why we look upon all the other systems and get everything working as best as we can to give that patient maximum pleasure and maximum enjoyment and maximum participation in life around her. So thank you very much for your invitation. We've enjoyed our time together very much. And I can see from what you've said, you would also make a wonderful nutritionist also for management of Parkinson's disease. Thank you so much.